Night, Travis. You got me in the mood.
It's there's something about the fair that it just screams summer. It screams, I don't know, where I grew up, kind of rural, small town, and the people watching is always fun as well. Give everyone a heads up if you're not a snake person like I am not. That's my like the one thing that I don't like is snakes. There's a gentleman who is doing a phenomenal job, but he's got like three pythons at a booth right at the beginning of the fair as you walk in. I mean, he's very educational and super wonderful, but if you're not expecting that and you walk in and all of a sudden you just see big snakes hanging out there, it catches you a little bit off guard.
Thank you for that warning. That's definitely needed. Okay, so how about the food? Any good food you recommend?
I didn't do that last night. So dad's real strict. Last night was not food and rides. Last night was bingo only. So we went and did some bingo, and then I think we're gonna go back either today or tomorrow, and that's when the kids can get their wristbands and we run around like crazy and do all that stuff.
You would have been at a loss if you would have done food.
Oh, for sure. And then our family has taken in over the last couple of years. I'd never done this growing up, but I guess a very country rural thing for us. But we're now demolition derby fans. So if you haven't been to that, it's loud and there's carnage, but it's just so entertaining. So I think we're gonna go again this year. Okay, enough of the Gregg family and our habits at the Buffalo County Fair. We will go ahead and get started today. Thank you everyone for joining us. And maybe just for the sake of attendance, if you could do the song and dance for us, please, and put your name and organization within the chat so we can capture that. I would really appreciate that. Let's see. So we've got our agenda up on the screen there. So what we want to get a chance to do today is just to go through and review the minutes from last month, talk about where we've been. Then Jamie will help walk us through the collaborative work group and our FACES document, talking about that again. And then we'll really want to spend kind of the bulk of today, I think, talking about when we're saying expectations of the steering committee. Is we had a little bit of discussion last month, I believe, around goals, SMART goals, doing some goal setting. So we've got now, as we're starting to set up work groups, we've got the youth and adolescent and child work group going. And so they're going to be doing a lot of the work now. So what is that role of the steering committee of the collaborative as it relates to the work group? And what we've talked about is they're going to do the work, but since it all needs to tie and align together, is how can we create maybe some shared goals and goals that we don't want to force on them, but things that we can all agree to and align to with what we're doing. And then we'll kind of finish out our conversations today by just continuing to update and talk about the work around DEI and then any update from the community partners board. So. And it looks like we've got folks in the conference room today, so it's great to see that we've got part of our group meeting in person. So that's awesome to see as well. Anything else before we go ahead and kick things off today, folks? Okay, so everyone has done their introductions. If there's anyone that's new to the group, I'm looking through, I don't know that I've seen any new names or faces, but if there's anyone new today, please go ahead and you can unmute, and if you'd like to be so brave, go ahead and introduce yourself. But otherwise, I think we've got some usual characters within our group today. So to talk about, unfortunately, Emily wasn't able to be here today. So we'll just, oh, excuse me, I want to jump over our minutes. Do we have the minutes from last month that we can pull up quick just to see if there's anything that anyone has any questions on? Or Denise, or does someone want to speak to that, any of the staff?
It looks like Denise needs to speak to that because she didn't put them in the packet, did she?
No worries.
Yeah, that's easy to approve when they're not in the packet. Okay, we'll do that next month. How about that, Travis?
We'll double up. We'll do June and July next month. This team can handle it. I'm sure of it. Okay, so to explore where we've been since Emily isn't here with us today, all very familiar documents, things that the staff have put together for us over the past recent months, and so I won't spend a lot of time doing that. But these are documents that essentially it's kind of helps with the elevator pitch as to what we're doing as a collaborative. And so it goes all the way back from the early days through the work that we're doing now and what we'd like to accomplish going forward. Also on the website, Michelle has put all of that up there for us. So if you're speaking with community groups or friends, colleagues, whoever, and you're talking about these meetings that you're sitting in on and the work that we're doing, there's some visuals and some key words and terminology to take away from there. So again, all of this is in the packet here. It's being flashed up on the screen, but it's also on the Buffalo County Community Partners website if you'd like to access any of that. And we highly encourage that. I know that Denise and I had a chance to present to one of the Rotary clubs a few months back, and we didn't quite have all of these documents at the time, but there were visual elements that we were able to use to help kind of convey our vision as to what we're doing. And thank you, Michelle, she put the link in the chat there. So if you're looking for these documents online, she's got that there. Okay, so I will turn it over to Jamie, and she can talk about our work group and the phases document that we put together.
Thanks, Travis. I'm sure you got the email from Denise celebrating the start of our youth and child collaborative. So some exciting work going on there. So I just wanted to bring this back up again. This is kind of the I guess the process of phases of getting the youth, adolescents, and children's youth collaborative going. So right now it looks like they're in the alignment phase. They've done some foundational work with the leaders and getting the members together, and now they're ready to go in person and start sharing data and results and things like that. So you can kind of see the different phases in their plan in that work as you look at this document. I'm sure this was included in your packet today, so you do have this with you. And I'm sure they are raring to go. I know they're excited to get together in person and meet that way. So anything else to add to that? Anyone from that collaborative on this meeting today that wants to add something?
I don't think we have any of those leaders on right now, Jamie. I met with them, and not just myself, but a few of the staff members met with Jason Owens and Alexandra Dillon and Chandra Diaz. We have a few vacations happening, kind of similar to what you guys are seeing today as well. So they have put a really strong agenda together. They are going to do breakouts at the Hania Ram Center. They encourage you to come in through door 2. If you need an elevator, enter into door 1. That will all be coming out in the agenda. They are going to do like a 45-50 minute breakout rapid fire session to really get to some of the themes that we want to be addressing, because they really want to get to action. So they're going to be looking at the past accomplishments in our community and maybe what setbacks we've had as a community when it involves children and youth. And then they're going to start talking about the present, like what are our strengths and our weaknesses that we also need to address in the present day. And then moving into the future, what opportunities and threats. So kind of a SWOT analysis with a couple little innovative twists with that. So they're excited to do that, invite people, encourage people who are working with children, youth, and adolescents to attend that meeting. I'm working on the agenda right now, and I hope to have it out yet this week. So please share that and invite people to come to that meeting, because that's their success is your success as well. So I don't know if you have any questions of where they're headed, but I've just really been impressed with that leadership team.
Thanks, Denise. They're a pretty dynamic group. I think we got some great leaders going in that group. So I think next is steering committee expectations, and that's going to Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So really, this is where we'd like to get some interactions and feedback from you guys. I think we kind of set this up a little bit last month. We talked a little bit more about it as a small group of us met last week when we were planning the agenda for today. And so kind of to recap a little bit, some of the things that I mentioned last week, for me, when we're looking to accomplish work, when I'm looking to accomplish work in my professional career, I look at structure, people, process. And we've now set these elements into motion. We have the structure for what we're doing. We have the collaborative, we've got steering committee, we have this work group going. We have identified leaders and participants, people who are doing the work within those areas. So that's the people. We have processes in place now, and that's the part we're trying to develop that. And that's what Jamie just touched on with where they're at within their phasing there. So we're starting to fire on all cylinders with structure, people, process. And so the next kind of logical step for me would be, I think that it's time for us to set some goals. And when we take a look at goals, maybe let's take a look at it from the standpoint of what we consider a SMART goal. And so for those who maybe aren't familiar with that, when we're talking about a SMART goal, the idea behind that is it's simple, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time sensitive. So not having large, complicated goals or having ambiguous goals, but what can we do as a steering committee to have some alignment with the collaborative? So the goals would be, outside of the SMART goals, would be to not to tell them how to do their work, but to capture work that they're doing in a meaningful way in a SMART goal so that we can use that as kind of a success measurement for the work that is being done within that youth, adolescent, and child work group there. And what we talked about last month are maybe goals around the areas of what's listed there. We've got the decision-making matrix. We've talked about our impact statements, and then having some lived experience worked within those goals a little bit. So I'm going to pause there, maybe allow Denise to add any flavor or things that I've missed with the setup of that, and then hopefully she can turn it over. We can turn it over to some discussion as to what you are all thinking and what you'd like to set as SMART goals for the group.
I don't think I have much to add, Travis. I'm excited to get to this point where you're ready to kind of set those goals, because I think you're all ready to define something that you can all kind of hold on to and work towards. So I'm excited to hear the rest of the conversation. I would maybe share too, when we had this conversation in building the agenda, there was just a lot of questions. Like, what is our role as a steering committee? What's the role of the work group? There's just a lot of questions. We just took a lot of time just to process through. So we're expecting that as well, that you may just have a lot of questions. And in that time, I'm confident we'll get to something that's measurable and framed in a SMART goal.
So we'll just open it up from there, and don't be afraid to ask questions, to clarify, or to throw out a suggested goal. This is kind of the part where we start putting some finite and concrete results around all of the conversations that we've been having over the last several months, and if not longer. So what are your guys' thoughts? What should we be looking at or considering when we're talking about goals? I know it's kind of a loaded question. We kind of talked about it in a roundabout fashion last month, excuse me, as to maybe to help frame it, but exactly what does success look like in 12 months? So maybe we can start there again and then help to refine what that vision looks like and word that into a goal. So what does success look like in 12 months for the youth, for the steering committee related to the youth, adolescent, child work group?
I can throw in here too. I just pulled up the minutes because that's the one piece, not having those in front of you is going to be a little bit of a challenge. So some of the things you guys said last time, and hopefully this is helpful. Um, what are the expectations and boundaries? So some of the initial ideas that you had is what a timeline to phases. So you got that accomplished already. Sharing key information from meetings and then metrics to measure impact. That was some of the major conversation holders that you guys had. How data and stories enable us to share the progress, mutually agreed upon data points. So again, there's a lot of measurement pieces that are kind of coming to the forefront. Need to make sure that community embraces data and the stories, determined how that's presented to the community. We talked a little bit about the 40 developmental assets and how that can tell the story. And assets are part of the Search Institute project that will, there's 40 assets that all youth should have in order to be healthy and well. We also talked about when organizations or other collaboratives or coalitions may come to the steering committee, how would you make a decision if they were going to be maybe a part of the system that you're building? What questions would you be asking of those groups that are coming to you? You know, what's their intended impact? Who's around the table? What are they measuring? How do they align with the work that you're doing? We had a little bit of that conversation. We talked about system in that impact statement. What do we mean when we say system? So services versus systems, reentry. I think even Jessica Vickers mentioned that her business is to make sure that people reenter the system to come in for counseling. And so that was some of the conversations we were having around that definition. What to measure when people are utilizing the system and we want them to use that system. And then when we said, what does success look like? Each agency said their successes look different. So what would that look like if we were all aligned in that type of success? For childcare, ensuring that every child receives quality social emotional childcare was one piece. Better follow-up, compliance rates for those that are seeing medical providers or mental health therapists. Maternal use of therapy sessions, as well as safety techniques or use of safety techniques. And I think that's most of what you talked at the last minute. It's a little scattered, but I do hear themes of data through all of that. I do hear themes of what are our responsibilities as a steering committee to have some format or what do I want to say, like boundaries to be able to support the work in the community, and how do we set those boundaries, or what do those boundaries maybe look like? Is that helpful or more confusing? So what does success look like in 12 months for the steering committee?
Well, to me, I think number one is each of these work groups need to define, what is in the community. We need to ask them, when we talk about child and youth, what is in the community and where our gaps are, what they perceive their gaps. And then I think that work group has to then define what they want to accomplish, what they can accomplish. But I think we have to require that as a steering committee of all of our work groups, whether it's access, whichever of those leaves of that flower it is. The steering committee needs to say, okay, you need to define what you're doing. Here's what we're doing. Here's where our gaps are. Because I don't think we're going to accomplish much if we can't define what those gaps are and what our needs are as a community.
Dr. Schaefer, to kind of expand on that a little bit, if us as a collaborative, and I love what you're saying, if we as a collaborative were able to create some, or steering committee create some goals around what you just described, and then the work group does the work but the steering committee kind of has these higher level goals. Does that
So-
capture what you're thinking?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Then
Yeah.
the steering committee can actually look and see, okay, yeah, you're dealing with that. But maybe this committee over here, this work group over here is kind of working on some of the same issues. So I don't know that we want, maybe we do want, depending on who the individuals are in that work group. Maybe we do want them working on simultaneous issues. Maybe we want to say, hey, maybe you need to dedicate your time more to this area. Because I think that's what the steering committee is for, is kind of directing these work groups. Your focus may need to be just a little bit here, over here, just a little bit more to the right.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to get is if we can have each of these work groups begin to assess what's going on in the community. And I know that children and youth have divided into different ages. So they can begin to look at the different ages and what are some of our resources, what are some of our gaps. And I think that's something that we have to expect them to develop over, I don't know whether it's 3 months or 6 months, to begin to look at that. And then by the time 12 months is around, I would hope they'd come to some, actions that they're taking.
Denise, would it be okay if I shared a little bit of what we talked about yesterday at the Rooted call? Okay. Yesterday on our Rooted and Community for Kids call, we had done a survey. It was a countywide survey of childcare. We found that there was a disconnect between employers and employees as far as like needs in childcare. So we talked a lot about maybe simplifying what we want to know about childcare as far as like openings, if there's wait lists, because a lot of times we find there's huge wait lists for childcare centers and in homes. And then we want to take that information to human resources for the city, for the public schools, for all these like Baldwin's, and give them this information that, hey, there is this disconnect and your employees do need childcare and it is important. So for me, like what success would look like in 12 months is being able to share that information with HRs when it comes to that childcare setting.
Okay,
I think-
this is Kathy Gifford, and I just wanted to bring up too that one of the jobs, we've talked about this in the board of directors meeting, that part of the responsibility of the steering committee might be to, or should be in my estimation, that they somehow report to the board of directors as to what's going on. It's a communication thing. And that's why I'm serving on the steering committee right now, is to serve as a liaison between the board of the directors and the work groups. That's the steering committee to me. And so that we know whether it fits in with, our budget, our staff that we have available, and whether we need to turn it over to somebody else in the community, those kinds of things, those kinds of decisions are going to have to be made by the steering committee, I think. So that's another piece that we don't want to forget about, is just the logistics behind how we make that determination.
So Aaron, for you, a goal might be something around generating a list within a certain period of time and getting it to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe large employers or employers within the community.
Yes.
And that list, I should be more specific, would be around wait lists of in-home and center providers with childcare providers within Kearney community and or Buffalo County.
Yeah. Just to, like I said, we just saw a disconnect that employers weren't seeing the need of childcare that the employees were necessarily seeing. So we just want to kind of see if we can bring that full circle to share with the employers.
Would we go as far as having a goal around a reduction in a wait list, or is that a next step, or as an initial goal or SMART goal, would it just be around generation within a certain time frame and getting it to the right parties?
I think right now it's just getting it to the right parties, but I think down the road, that would be the goal, is to not have these huge wait lists.
What else? Anyone else have reactions to what Dr. Schaefer, Aaron, or Kathy have commented on so far?
I guess a couple of thoughts. And I think these themes are woven into what's already been said to some extent, is that there is a clear connection and communication among the steering committee, board of directors, and the work groups, so that there is active sharing of information. There's evidence that that's happening. That maybe there's evidence that there's active gathering of that data, that there's follow through with that, in terms of whatever that might look like, that we have established a list of daycare providers and what the wait lists look like, whatever the data is for that time, obviously up to the extreme of what's working and not working at some point. Also that I'm hearing a lot of noise from the community about what's happening, and get a lot of questions along those lines, and somehow maybe making sure that we're communicating with the community about the different levels and items that are being worked on to some degree, whatever that might look like, press releases or a community gathering like we did with the Hope and Healing couple years ago, et cetera. So I think success will be that communication, that connection among the levels of support with the program and the collaborative, wellness collaborative. And like Dr. Schaefer said, starting to step by step recognize action and activity is actually occurring.
Yeah, I like what you said. When you say connection, I'm thinking accountability. So, and that's a good thing. But accountability from the Buffalo County Community Partners Board, the steering committee, the collaborative, and then the work groups. We have all of these different folks. They should all be in alignment, and there should be an accountability system so that we know that they're effective. Otherwise, we got a whole lot of man hours being put into these efforts, and if we're not effective, then what are we doing? And the communication in the community, I think that's huge. That's a piece that honestly I've had a blind spot on that I probably have overlooked as to the work that we're doing and sharing that more broadly.
One other quick note is, that's measurable is identifying what those gaps are, but also where is that overlap? When we're finding those gaps, but where are the overlaps too, so we can not overuse or misuse resources, be more frugal and efficient. And we've talked about that repeatedly as well. I just wanted to add that to Dr. Schaefer's note in terms of the gaps, but also where those overlaps are. We need to be able to identify those easily, hopefully sooner than 12 months, but for sure within 12 months.
Okay, just making some notes for myself. Thank you. Any other feedback? So what I'm thinking from here is I think this is enough information to put something together for you to react to at our next meeting. Denise, would you agree with that, with what we've captured here in the conversations we've had next month, that we could try to outline some goals and what that accountability structure is back up to the board, and then maybe discuss a communication plan for next month too, is how do we and how periodically do we let the community know what we're doing and what our results are?
I would agree with you, Travis. A part of me also wants to pause and just say, what could we do as a steering committee and right now to help the early childhood group? So what pieces could we be helping them with as we start to build this? Because there does seem to be a sense of urgency with that as well. But maybe, I don't know, Travis, do you think that's worth a little conversation as well?
We could talk about that. Obviously, I'm in support of it, but I would almost challenge that we as the steering committee find a way to, we have that woven into the work group of the youth, adolescent, child, that they should be the ones to solve the problem, to paint the walls in that situation. We just need to make sure that we give them the support and enough paint essentially so that they can continue to do the work they need to do.
Yeah, that's very logical as well. Thank you. And Aaron, I think you are planning on coming to the meeting next week, and the meeting is structured for you to be able to talk about that throughout the meeting. So it should be a theme that reoccurs throughout that conversation for others to hear even beyond.
So can I just use this as an example of what the steering committee could do to help? So Aaron comes with this, that this is something that the committee is really interested in. And maybe what the steering committee could do is, what resources do we have that we could to help them enable this? Okay. So right off the bat, I'm thinking HR managers. Is there a network of HR managers? Does our, is there a group in town that meets? Is that something that we can facilitate, Denise, as a steering committee, as Buffalo County Community Partners? I mean, what other resources I think the steering committee ought to be thinking to help all of the work groups figure out, do they have all their resources? And they should be looking at the same thing. But we should be looking at it very broadly too. So I just want to think that that's some of the role of the steering committee, is to figure out what else we can do to help those work groups.
Okay, any other thoughts on expectations of the steering committee versus the collaborative, or potential goals?
Apologize, I had to step away for a second, but I do have a potential goal. I would like to propose that we ensure that there is actively participating in the different collaboratives and in the steering committee, someone with lived experience in that area, to help make decisions and guide the work in the group. If every single one of those little collaboratives had someone with lived experience in a year, I would call that success.
Yes, well said, Jamie. Okay, I think we have captured a ton of information, and I appreciate it. I know that we were a little bit slow out of the gate with some of our comments there, but thanks everyone who spoke up and participated. Oh, Krista, I saw that you came off mute. I didn't want to cut you off. Do you have something you want to add?
I guess I was just going to kind of reinforce what Dr. Schaefer said, and with Erin going back to the youth group then next week, being sure that communication piece of bringing some of this information about our discussion, at least in a brief synopsis, and discussion openly at that group. So that's that part of that connection and part of that communication, including like something that's very measurable, like, do we have a lived experience person on this group? And if not, how do we take care of that type of thing? If that's going to be one of our potential successes, just those foundational communication pieces, I think, are just huge. I was just going to reinforce that.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm not sure who on the back end, I don't know if this is Michelle or who it is, but whoever the staff member is that's taking notes and feverishly typing, you're doing an awesome job capturing that. So thank you so much. Yeah, it's not me, that's for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and move on then. I'm pretty sure I saw Martha sitting at the table there, or if there's someone else that wants to give an update, but anything else going on with the DEI work group?
This is Martha Marpileño. As of now, there's going to be a pause put for the July meeting that Maha was going to be having, but she's hoping to be able to bring that group back together possibly in the month of August. And so that was just the only update I had for that piece.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Thank you for being a connection to Maha and the work that's going on there and tying that back to the work that we're doing. I think that's great. Kathy, since I also know that you're at the table there, do you want to give an update? Is there anything going on at the board level that you'd like to make us aware of?
The only discussion that we had at the board level too was to make sure we kind of identify the people like Dr. Schaefer and myself and Diane Duffy who are on the board. We're serving as kind of navigators on the steering committee. We refer to ourselves as that. It's a little different than you guys that are the leaders. So I mentioned before, we're kind of a liaison between the Buffalo County Community Partners Organization and the steering committee and the work groups in order to continue to watch for grants and for funding and for resources, and also to be in touch with what the staff can and cannot do. And we're looking for a matrix to help us make those decisions, and we have it once in a draft form that we'll kind of take a look at. So that's where the board members see their role as far as being on the steering committee, as I understand it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update, Kathy. All right, it looks like I know that our next collaborative meeting is just coming up next week. And so that's on the agenda there. You can all see that. And then our next steering committee meeting is, well, that's today. So we'll send out we will get an email to let you know when the next steering committee meeting is in August, and we'll get a chance to circle back and kind of review some goals at that time. So I'm really excited. Thanks everyone for the conversation around that today. I think that was really helpful. Anything else or any closing comments from Denise or any of the staff or Jamie before we close out today?
Okay, maybe one thought. Maybe just pause a moment and just celebrate what you have accomplished. You went from 12 to 13 different coalitions in this community over a year ago to launching a very far-reaching work group around children, youth, and adolescents. And congratulations. This has not been easy work, but you really should kind of just take a moment and just what do I want to say, bathe yourself in that celebration. You did good work. So thank you for all your help. I know on behalf of the staff, we appreciate that. It's been a challenge to go from 12 coalitions into something a little bit different and just trying to hold on to the work that's really important to have happen. And then also try to visualize what could be even better for our community. So thank you for your time and helping us get there. I really feel like we're actually starting to get wheels on the ground and getting some traction. So thank you.
And maybe one last thing too, if someone could help me out with the date here, just to put a plug in. I know that Josh has his last day coming up. He's been with Buffalo County Community Partners for over 8 years now. So when is the date for his celebration? Is that the 27th or?
That is actually next Wednesday at 4 o'clock at our office. So yeah, come up and congratulate Josh, or send him a card, drop him an email. He would love to hear from you. So yes, Wednesday at 4.
He has made a difference with the youth in our community, and so it's a big loss for us, but we wish him all the best. Okay, everyone, make it to the Buffalo County Community Fair, I guess. That would be my parting comment. You can all win big like I did at bingo. So have a great week, everyone. We'll talk to you later.